So myself, Melon and Ace here are just hacking down to a local sand school today. So it's about a mile away, so we've got to hack there first. That'll be a great warm-up for Melon. And I'm very grateful that they have actually let me borrow a stable while I'm there, so I can ride Melon, put Ace in the stable to begin with, do the schooling I need to do on Melon, and then swap over and school Ace while Melon chills, and then hack them back. So yeah, it's about a 20-25 minute hack depending on how fast I go. So yeah, I'll tie you in when I get there. But yeah, really lucky to have this facility with us. It's only a 20 by 40. It's quite a small school, but you know, in the winter it's so much better than me constantly having to ride in the school. So I do most of my flat work schooling out on the roads in the winter, as you guys know, and I hire this local school when I want to do a little bit of jumping. There are a couple of other schools around that are a bit bigger, but they cost a bit more, so I try and keep to the smaller one when you know, I'm just doing basic stuff, and then I can hire out some of the bigger ones if I want lessons and things like that. But yeah, I will let you know when we get there. See you in a bit. So here we are, we have just started. The beauty of hacking over is that we have already warmed up, so we can get straight into it. So here I have set up 4 walk poles at X, and I am going over them on a 20-metre circle, on like a figure of 8, sorry. So a 20-metre circle at either end. And the idea is I want to try and get his walk a bit more foretime, because he does walk a little bit like a camel. Naturally, that's the walk he gives in the field. So he kind of, instead of being completely foretime, it's a 1, 2, 3, 4 kind of walk. Whereas the poles really help him to start actually walking in a much more foretime rhythm. So that is what I am asking of him here, and starting to build those muscles up for him. So yeah, you can see as we go over the poles, his walk becomes much more rhythmical, much more regular, which is what I want from him. So then I start in a second asking him for a little bit of trot. There we go. So I then trot half a circle, bring him back to walk over the poles. So we're doing loads and loads of transitions in this time, just to get him underneath him, and also because his walk becomes worse after a transition usually. So the idea is then we go back to the poles, it becomes a little bit more rhythmical, and then I can ask him to step forwards again into the trot, as well as changing up the bend, changing up the direction, and asking him to work into a contact. So Melon started this session a little bit on the tense side. Now this is partly because we're in a different place that he's not been to for a while, but also because he hacked over with his friend and now he no longer has her, and so he was calling a little bit to her in the stable. So I wanted to get him working nice and early. So Melon is quite clingy to other horses, especially horses he's gone with. Horses he doesn't know if he's fine. Hacking out on his own, he's fine, but if you go somewhere either hacking together or boxing together, he then becomes quite clingy if you try to separate. So I do try and bring them separately or together to places and then separate them while we're there, so that he learns that that's okay before we start competing out together. So he is starting to relax down into it. He's stopped shouting so much for Ace, which is really, really good. And so I'm just trying to get him to work. You can see he is starting to come down into a contact here. So I think it's this time round I'm about to add in some canter. So yeah, so that was my first canter transition of the day. So it wasn't great, but it wasn't awful. So I'm cantering half a circle, bringing him back to trot, walking just before the poles, walking over the poles, asking him to trot, and then again cantering half a circle. Yeah, not a great transition, but we're still early on in the session and they do get better. So this is starting to work towards simple changes for him. So that is, in an ideal world, a canter walk canter transition. He has great walk to canter. He has less good canter to walk. So there he started to anticipate a bit, so I just kept the walking for a little bit longer, so he was actually listening to my aids, not what he thought we wanted to do. And so you can see again here, trot quarter of a circle, walk over the poles, and then go forwards to trot, and then pick up canter. So yeah, again, quite happy with these transitions, bearing in mind he is a 5-year-old, so nothing's going to be perfect. And again, trotting over the poles, and I think in a minute I start adding in walk to canter, still coming on the downwards transition through trot. So there we go, walk to canter. As you see, his walk to canter transitions are actually relatively good, relatively balanced for his age. So we're coming round the corner, and I'm also getting my canter transition closer to the poles each time, so that eventually we'll be going canter trot walk as opposed to canter trot walk. As you can see, his walk to canter is generally very good, generally very balanced. So super pleased with that. Yeah, as you can see here, our canter is getting much closer, so we're only having sort of 2 or 3 strides of trot, going back to walk over the poles, and then picking up canter in the other direction. So at the moment I'm keeping it really easy for him. Again, I'm always changing the reins so he knows exactly what's going to happen. Once he's super confident in a session or 2 down the line, I will maintain the same canter lead at times. That I was really pleased with. He really sat back into that downward transition because he does tend to fall on his forehand a bit. So really happy with what he's starting to offer me here. So this last transition here I was really happy with because it was almost straight canter to walk. Wasn't particularly smooth, but it was quite close and he was really sitting back. So here we tried to anticipate, but I just wanted him to walk at this point because I wanted to give him a little bit of a breather before we changed the rein and did it on the other rein going over the poles in the other direction. So this school does have a very slight slope to it, so I wanted to make sure we were practicing. So the way we were going, we were primarily coming downhill. I wanted to also do a little bit of the same going uphill. So we started off with just trotting, then walking over the poles, then trotting before we added in the canter, just to make sure we were happy going in this direction. I often find he can be a little bit spookier going over poles in this direction because you are kind of heading quite close towards a solid hedge as opposed to a more open fence line. So I just wanted to make sure that he was confident and happy going through the poles before I started to add a little bit of canter in. So yeah, super happy. He's starting to really relax down over his back, which I was really pleased with him. Because like I say, he's very naturally a very tense upright horse, and so just starting to get him to come down, starting to relax through the transitions and to sit back on his back end as opposed to rushing on his forehand. So here you can see I'm adding in the canter, doing exactly the same as I did on the other rein, although I missed out the walk, trot, canter. I went straight walk to canter, and then cantered back to walk, give him a few strides of trot, change the rein, pick up canter on this rein. So yeah, again, his transitions are starting to really come together. I'm really happy with what he does offer. He is starting, for a 5-year-old, he's starting to become super balanced. So yeah, super happy with this so far. So yeah, again, just a lovely balanced canter around that end. And like I say, this is quite a small area, although I do work him in a 20 by 40 area in my field at home. That's obviously a lot more open because it's just a marked out, whereas this is very constrained because there's fences. He's not done a lot of work in sand schools, just because I don't have access to one all the time, but so really happy with him feeling a little bit more contained and things like that, so that we can start working on, you know, bigger areas and things. So super happy with that. So I then give him a quick walk, give him a breather before we move on to a little bit of jumping in a second. So moving on to the jumping here, I wanted to start doing some work on getting him to land on a lead that I asked. He tends to prefer landing on right canter, so I wanted him to start listening to my aids, as well as me learning how to move my body on him to get the canter we wanted. So I started off by trotting over this small cross pole and picking which canter lead I wanted him to land on. So there I wanted left canter, and I'm pretty sure I come round and ask for right canter this time. Might be lying, might do left again. I did left again. I lied. So you can see I'm making sure I'm asking for the lead I want, not, you know, just hoping and praying. So eventually this will become a bit more, there we go, there's my right lead. So you can see here he's picking up the lead I want. So at the moment it's on quite an obvious bend to make sure that we do land on the correct lead, but eventually I'd hope to be able to do this on a straighter line But I do find doing it over X is really clear to the horse that you want them to do it, because you're as a rider, you're naturally looking and turning, and the horse has to turn before you run into a fence. So here I'm now in canter, and I'm starting to ask for some changes over jumps. So there, we obviously got right to left canter, and I think we'll go around and ask for left to right canter, just so that we're starting to learn how to change our legs over jumps as well. So there he missed. That was partly my fault. We got in too close. He finds it much easier to stay on the same leg if he gets in too close than he does if we're a bit further away. But he needs to learn to still, land on the lead I asked of him. So there again, we landed on left canter after a right lead. And here I think I come round and I ask for another right lead canter, which we actually got. So looking back at these videos, you can see he doesn't actually have a lot of bend after the fence, which is something we need to work on. So we're just going, I gave him a bit of a break, and then we went off and just did that again. So yeah, we're having a little pop around. I think also there were a couple of times I asked him to stay on the same lead, just to make sure that we weren't always changing the lead. I don't want him to always anticipate that. But this is also like prep work for eventual flying changes one day. That's a long way down the line, but one day it will happen. So here we go. Yeah, we're always changing the lead at the moment, which I am, super happy with him, super happy with how balanced he has stayed over the fence. There we got a little bit too close, but I had asked him to remain on the same lead, which he did. So yeah, super happy that he's actually listening to me, listening to my body, not necessarily listening to what he thinks we should do. There we go, we got a lovely change there. So yeah, this really starts to show that he's listening to me, not what he thinks we should be doing. And we stayed on the same lead again. So now, with it offered that so nicely, I went and thought we would just put it up to a fairly big cross pole. Probably the middle of that cross pole is 2.6 to 2.9, but obviously it's quite tricky for him. So this first time I completely panicked, completely messed up the striding. I asked him for a long stride, which he really struggles with, and it didn't go very well. Bless him, he still tried, but so we came back. And I told him he was a good boy for still going, because he could have said no. And I actually got my butt in gear and actually wrote him how he prefers to be ridden, which is getting in close. He would much, much, much prefer to get really close into a fence. Now that's just his stage of training and his confirmation. So we're trying to stay on the same lead. I'm not really worrying too much about which leg we land on here. So there we got a bit further away. We didn't actually, I had actually asked for a change, which he didn't offer that time, but never mind. I wasn't too worried about that. I was actually pleased he just took the jump from a little bit further away. And there I could see that, we couldn't quite get there. So this was a really tricky exercise, mainly for me, because I kind of struggled to see strides on him anyway, and coming off quite a tight turn, I had very little chance to actually decide what stride I was going on. It was very much a case of just go and hope. But yeah, super pleased with him there. He did some really nice jumps over that bigger jump. So now we're moving on to Ace. So she is obviously much younger, much, much greener. She's done very, very little schoolwork at all in her time, just because she took a little bit longer than Melon to physically mature, so I kept her primarily in straight lines for quite a long time. So I set up here a little one stride double for her. This is only her second time in this sand school ever. So, yeah, it was really, really good for her. I'm not at all worried about her head. All I want is her to go off my leg and go forwards. So she was a little bit distracted to begin with because, like I say, Melon is quite clingy and he was down in the stable calling for her. Thankfully, Ace is quite independent, so didn't mind too much. Obviously, she'd stood for a while, so she had a little bit of a warm-up, which Melon didn't need before we could get into some work. But again, so we've had a nice little trot round, let her have a look, do some changes of reins, a little bit of bending, but she's so green, so immature that I didn't really want to do too much. So that was my first canter transition of the day, which I was fairly happy with for her. She went through a phase where she would really run into the canter, and she also didn't really care which lead she picked up. She would just pick up whichever lead she felt like because she wasn't balanced enough. So we've been working really hard to get canter transitions that little bit more balanced, which we are slowly starting to get there with her. So I gave her a little walk, changed the rein here, before I ask her for a little canter on the other rein in a second. So she prefers left canter, but again, she is now really starting to learn about canter leads. There we picked up the wrong canter, so I brought her back to a trot and corrected that canter lead and popped her on a little circle here. Again, I don't really care about where her head is. I don't really care about her bending. At this point, it would be nice to get a little bit of bend, but all I want at the moment is forwards and confident from her, which I'm super happy to say she offered me. So yeah, all in all, really happy with this little bit of flat work session with her. It just looks completely different, even though there's only a year between these horses. It shows you, A, what a difference a year can make in a horse's training, but also how different horses are. Cool, so I've clipped it because nobody wants to see me go around in circles for hours. So then I've just come down, I'm going to pop her through this little jump to begin with. So she jumps over the pole, and then, because she likes to jump over poles, and then we put in a couple of little strides before we jumped over the little cross pole. So this was set up on a relatively short distance. She is relatively short herself, but also she really struggles to get those long distances. So I wanted to make it quite easy for her, but also I really struggled to sit to her jump. There she popped over the pole in canter, landed in canter, put in one stride and went over the jump, but it was a bit long because obviously it was from trot. So this time I'm pretty sure I then ask her to canter over it, just to make it a little bit easier for her to make that distance, because it is set up as a canter stride, not as a trot stride, but I wasn't really expecting her to jump the poles. I was expecting her to trot over the poles, but she does what she likes. But yeah, so I just had a little walk here. I think I was chatting to one of the people that own the school, and then I pop her into canter and I canter her round. So I'm focusing on her being forward, but relatively balanced at the same time, because she's not adjustable at the moment. So she needs to be balanced enough that no matter what stride we hit, she can get over it. So that is kind of what I'm asking. So now you can see we've popped up the first part of it into a little cross pole. So she's not had a lot of experience jumping through doubles and grids and things, so I did that once, and then just asked them to pop the last part of it up, because I don't want to do too much jumping with her. She is only a 4-year-old. She had hacked here, and she does still have to ride back. So I think I just popped her over this once as well. Might have done it twice, but I think I only did it once, just to give her something a little bit bigger to jump. Yeah, I only did it once, and then called it a day with her. So I was super pleased with what she offered me. So we are just hacking back now. Both ponies were absolutely super. Melon was doing some, you'll see in the video, Melon was doing some work on picking up the correct canter lead over jumps. So he was doing some jumps over a cross pole, and I was trying to choose which leg he landed on. So yeah, and we got that in the end, and even ended up doing quite a big cross pole, so really happy with that. And then Ace is just, hey baby girl, come on, keep up. Ace is knackered, but she was just doing some work. We did a little one stride double, but it's just getting her used to being ridden in different places, on a different surface and things like that. So yeah, both of them were super. Also with Ace, I'm getting used to her jump because I cannot sit to it. But yeah, really happy with both of them. They both went really well, and really excited for the future with both of them. So I'm going to leave you guys here now. I'm just going to sign you off, and yeah, we'll see you next time, guys. Bye.